News Talk 96.9, Hank Morse, Radio Row, Democratic National Convention, and lucky to have Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, former Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, is right here joining us right here on Radio Row. Thank you for being here. And as I awaited your arrival, I was thinking, okay, she's Robert and Ethel's daughter, Joe's sister. Joe the Third is her nephew.
And godson.
I did not know that.
Yes.
And
so I hope that his spiritual upbringing shows.
I hope so. We'll make sure to check that.
Yeah.
The president was her uncle. Senator Kennedy was her uncle. I mean, you come from this storied background. There isn't another family like it in the United States of America. Talk about what it's like to be a part of that family and to still be involved in the process after all these years.
I mean, different members of my family clearly feel differently about growing up in my family. I'm one of those that loved it. I'm the oldest of my 11 brothers and sisters. I'm the oldest of all my cousins, and I got to see my uncle become the first Catholic president, which was really exciting. And I was at Our Lady of Victory School, which is one of the times when you had 45 kids in the class and one nun, and it was just a wonderful time of what can we do? What can we accomplish? I don't know if you've seen what's on the back of our tickets, but it's, a person, Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon. The idea that this is a country that could do great things and could solve great problems was a very exciting time.
Let me ask you, fast forward to here we have 2012, and the vitriol between the candidates,
right.
It's a much different than that Nixon-Kennedy debate in 1960. Do you lament the courtesy shown to the candidates, or has politics always been a nasty game?
I'm kind of a believer that politics has always been pretty nasty. I mean, you don't remember this now, but in 1960, for instance, Norman Vincent Peale, do you remember that name?
Yes, I do.
The power of positive thinking, do great things, sent out a letter to thousands of Protestant ministers and said, don't vote for John Kennedy because he's a Catholic. Billy Graham signed that letter, and then he retracted. But so this wasn't, we've had tough times before.
Right.
And if you go back to the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton weren't exactly
They didn't always play well with others,
they didn't play well together. So I think this is always a tough time. What I think, and we can deal with it. I mean, very frankly, I think we've dealt with much more difficult times. In the 60s, at least I remember, we had rioting in the streets. We had many deaths of our politicians, and
Sure.
we don't have to dwell on that,
As
but that's a very much more difficult moment. Before the Civil War, we had a horrendous situation which led to civil war. So I don't feel, I think people say bad stuff now, but I actually think that we're a little weak-kneed to worry about it. I mean, there are people in Afghanistan, which, by the way, Mitt Romney did not mention in his speech.
Right, well noted, you're right.
I mean, he's running for president. We've got a war going on. He doesn't mention the sacrifice of 2,000 people, and the people are being killed today. But, they're putting their life on the line. If somebody calls you a bad name, you should be able to take it.
Let me ask you this. What has it been?
What do you think? Maybe you disagree with me.
No, you want to know what's funny? Is that I had a chance last week at the Republican National Convention to interview Orrin Hatch and Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
And, both about 77 years old.
Yeah.
They were just much more diplomatic than the younger senators and congressmen.
Yeah.
They would go on and say, listen, we don't really think Barack Obama's got a lot of good ideas, but we don't think he's a bad gentleman. They were much more gentlemanly in their approach to it.
Yeah.
And I always loved the story that Gerald Ford, the night before, he was sworn in as the President of the United States, he and his wife went out to dinner with Tip and Millie O'Neill, and they were close friends.
Right.
Their families got along well. They socialized together. So the Democrat and the Republican together, that's almost unheard of today, which is kind of sad in the process.
I think it's a big difference than, for instance, in the 50s and 60s. I remember when I was growing up in the late 50s, early 60s, my family, you may have heard, they played touch football.
Yes, they did.
Good.
I've actually played touch football on the Kennedy compound lawn.
Okay.
With my wife, of course.
Yeah, good for you. So anyway, and Lodge, Senator Lodge from Massachusetts, the Kennedys and the Lodges would play every Saturday, and there was a trophy that would one day be sitting on our mantelpiece. The Kennedys won one week, and the other week the Lodges won. You can't imagine that happening sort of on a weekly basis today. And part of that is really just the good airplanes. Before you stayed in Washington, you went out to dinner in Washington, you went to the cocktail parties, and now people go home.
Now the portability of the office really
so it's a big difference.
has changed a little bit.
That's exactly
Talk about
right.
going forward. Why another 4 years for President Barack Obama? And I'm asking Democrats this because he has struggled. Jobs, 8.3%. A lot's been made out of 42 consecutive months above 8%.
Right.
$5 trillion in debt.
Right.
Why another 4 years? What would you say to Democrats who are undecided?
I think you say is, look what he's accomplished and what is the trajectory we're on. He's created 4.5 million private sector jobs, more private sector jobs in 4 years than George Bush did in 8 years. A large part of the unemployment rate comes because people have cut police, teachers, first responders. That's where, if you still had those public sector jobs, you would have a lower unemployment rate. That's number one. So keep that trajectory going. Two, Barack Obama believes that government has a role, that a country can be built on making sure that we've got that infrastructure, that we have the public schools, that we have a good health care, that we have excellent transportation system. I talked earlier about, the moon project. That's a government program. And what it came out of it, the internet, all sorts of scientific ideas. So you've got to dream big. And I saw from the Republican convention sort of a shrunken view of America. Not only do you not talk about Afghanistan, they hardly talked about anything that made our country great in the sense of we take care of one another. I'm glad he takes care of members of his church, but how do we take care of each other as a nation? How do we make sure that each of us really has the opportunities?
What bothers you the most about a potential Romney-Ryan ticket and the way that they talk about what they do for the country?
I think it really reduces America. I don't think it makes America an important, beacon of light around the world. He shrunk it. I mean, one of the great lines was, and he made fun. Barack Obama wants to save the planet. I want to help you as a family. Families are important. I love my family. I've got 4 daughters, 1 grandchild, another on the way.
Congratulations.
So I'm a happy family
Babies
person.
are good.
Babies are good. But I also understand there's something larger in a nation than just families or just individuals. There's something bigger. And I believe, like John Winthrop, one of my favorite speeches from, Massachusetts, that we can be a shining city on the hill. And I didn't hear or see any of that.
In Massachusetts, we have about 6.1% unemployment. In Rhode Island, it's over 11%. It's 9.6%. This was a key state, North Carolina, for President Barack Obama. He narrowly beat John McCain by 14,000 votes, less than 0.5%. And now Mitt Romney is leading in the polls by 4 points. What would you say to the voter in North Carolina today that's thinking about who they're going to vote for going forward in 4 more years?
Mitt Romney, governor of Massachusetts, didn't create jobs. In Massachusetts, if you want somebody who's interested in making money, private equity is a great way to make money for those who invest. But their goal is not creating jobs. It's not what it's about. Barack Obama, president, wants to have a country that creates jobs. We've done better in 4 years than the previous 8 years. We're on the right trajectory. Do we wish we were moving faster? Absolutely. Do we wish Europe were in better shape? Absolutely. But given what the limits of us are that are on us, we're doing pretty well.
Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, thank you for stopping by News Talk 96.9. We appreciate it.
I hope to get to play touch football with you next time you come to the game.
I would love to. Thank you very much.
Okay.